I'm Chris from Play Comics, a show where we look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material, a part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other astonishingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
I am the Green Arrow.
The Green Arrow has entered through the front door.
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Welcome back to Earth 2's favorite newspaper, and they still pay for newspapers over in Earth 2, the Starling Tribune. I am the chief editor. Tonight, my name is SP, and your other award-winning reporters for this special episode number 250 of the Starling Tribune are Chris.
Welcome to Book Club.
Yeah, and wine was present at Book Club. Did you notice that?
You have to have wine at a book club.
Yeah, or mom juice, as it's called in some circles. Yeah.
Or happy juice. I've heard that too.
Yeah. And Michelle.
We should have done a crossover.
I heard that. I was like, yeah. Especially, I did not see her costume until they put the lights on. I wasn't concentrating on the body. I was just concentrating on the face. And then all of a sudden it popped up. She was in the Supergirl costume. Oh, we're going to have to talk about that later. Hey, everybody. This podcast is recorded on Thursday, October 3rd, 2019, live on www.geeks.live.
That's right. And this evening, we'll be discussing the last two episodes of Legends of Tomorrow, as well as news, interviews, articles, and announcements that have dropped in the last couple weeks that could, and let's be honest, probably will impact the future episodes of Legends of Tomorrow, as well as The Flash, Supergirl, Arrow, Batwoman, Black Lightning, and I think I'm missing something, but I don't mean to, so I apologize if I left anyone out.
If you're new to the show, thank you for searching us out on the internet and joining us. After the show, you can check out our content at GonnaGeek.com. We can also find other geeky videos, podcasts, and articles.
Thanks, guys. Let's just get right into it. Michelle, go ahead and break down both episodes that we're going to be covering tonight.
First is Terms of Service, which is Season 4, Episode 15. It aired Monday, May 13, 2019. It's directed by April Mullen. Credits include 2 episodes of Killjoys, 4 Winona Earp, 3 Legends, and 1 of the 100. Written by Grant Godfrey. Credits include 4 The Tomorrow People, 1 Arrow, 6 Flash, and 15 Legends. And Ubay Muhammad, whose credits I forgot to include.
Whoops.
See?
Wait a minute.
We're going to do some live production work here, guys.
Episodes include 2 episodes of The Whisper. Did 8 story for Cold, teleplay for 1 Arrow, and has written 5 episodes of Legends of Tomorrow.
Also has been a story editor on this show for 16 episodes. So Ubay has a rich history in Legends of Tomorrow.
Our second episode is Hey World, Season 4, Episode 16. It aired Monday, May 20th, 2019. It was directed by Kevin Mock. Credits include 1 Chuck, 1 Flash, and 5 episodes of Legends. Written by Phil Klummer. Credits include 12 episodes of Chuck, 3 The Tomorrow People, and 13 Legends. And Kito Shimizu. Credits include 11 episodes of Arrow and 13 of Legends.
We're covering 2 episodes of Legends of Tomorrow, which took place over 2 different weeks. So we're just going to take them week by week in the CW ratings for the week. So the first episode was Terms of Service, and that aired on the week of the 12th of May, 2019. Supergirl aired on the 12th of May with their 21st episode of the 4th season titled Red Dawn to a Live Plus DVR rating of 1.87. On Monday, this episode of Legends of Tomorrow aired to a Live Plus 7-day DVR rating of 1.54. That's in millions. And on Monday, the 13th of May, following Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow had their 22nd episode of the 7th season titled, "You Have Saved This City," to a live plus 7-day DVR number of 1.51. Then on Tuesday, Flash aired their season finale. It was the 22nd episode of the 5th season, titled Legacy, to a live plus 7-day DVR rating of 2.69. And then the following week, when we had the season finale of Legends, we also had the season finale of Supergirl on the 19th of May, where Supergirl aired the 22nd episode of the 4th season, The Quest for Peace, to a live plus 7-day DVR rating of 1.87, the same as the week before. And then this episode of Legends, Hey World, aired to a live plus 7-day DVR number on the 20th of 1.56 million. It's all respectable numbers. We all know that everybody's looking forward to watching on the CW app or Netflix in the future, so I'm cool with this.
Yeah, solid ratings. I was one of those that watched on Netflix because that's the easiest way to consume after the season is ended. Just hit a button, no commercials, it just goes straight on to the next episode, and it was quite the fun experience to not have a 1-week wait time between these episodes. I guess that is the advantage to waiting to watch them when we are covering the shows, is I don't have to sit there and be like, oh God, I got to wait a week to see what happens? Dang it.
I know, it was pretty cool that Michelle orientated us to and organized us to have the penultimate and the final episode of Legends of Tomorrow season 4 in the same week so we could cover them. But I will say in the future, I don't know if we're going to be able to watch right away afterwards because their Netflix deal is changing with CW shows. I just don't know how that's going to affect the shows next year. We'll have to wait and see right now.
I think they have another year left on the existing deal, so any existing shows that are already going to Netflix will continue to do that. But anything new, I believe, is going to HBO Max. The new streaming service they have, so HBO Max, because they specifically quoted Batwoman in their press release as one of the streaming properties they'd have.
We'll see if we get all the episodes right away, because it's been a week or two following the season finale that they have shown up. The season has shown up on Netflix in the past. I don't know if the same thing is going to happen with HBO.
The implication for HBO was right after it airs, it would be available on there. But that was just the implication. They haven't said officially.
The season or the episodes?
The episodes.
Okay. Alrighty, so with that under our belts for the week, we're going to talk about the episodes themselves. Michelle, we got double duty this week where we're talking about the overall theme in relation to the title. We have 2 titles that we're talking about this week, so you get to be creative on how you handle it. So what do you say about the theme with the titles?
Well, first we have terms of service, and Neuron is posing as Ray Palmer, and he develops an app called Eyes. And I have to admit, I'm one of those people that scrolls through the terms of service and just hits accept. Fortunately, we have Zari who read the fine print and realized that, Neuron is collecting souls. He wants fear. And that's when we get to Hey World. It's sort of like first, like, hey world, look, this is what's happening. He's stowing fear. We have to fight it with, positive energy. And of course, the theme park is called Haywood. So it's like, hey world, it's Haywood. And that's where they decide to, show that monsters are regular individuals. They have talents. The ogre wants to sing, and they don't need to be afraid.
Ogre's a pretty good singer, too.
I'll admit this title had me stumped. I told these two before we started recording. Before I saw the episode, I didn't really get what Hey World was about. And then I saw the episode and I was like, oh, I should have seen that coming for like 6 months. And I didn't. So, bad on me. But it was cool. I liked it. I liked the fact that Haywood World actually got built. It was via magic, but hey, this whole season is magic. And I also like the nod to the fact that actually constructing something like this would take about 2.5 to 3 years, because it really would. So they needed the magic to get it done within the episode. I enjoyed these final 2 episodes back to back. It was a good story. I have some concerns going into season 5, but I think we'll get there eventually. Michelle, you want to talk about some of the time travel that we witnessed during these episodes?
What's interesting is it basically takes place in 2019 because that's where Neuron is, releasing his app and talking about how there's monsters among us. And then we get to see young Zari and her mom's pregnant with her brother. And they're living in a nice house. And Charlie goes over and she's like, I thought you grew up in some sort of dystopian thing. And she's like, no, you don't understand. 2 years from now, Argus does this. And a few years from now, we live in a ghetto. It's like, it's the nice calm before the storm. So it's not like we really had any actual time travel. We had a Rave Rider and we have 2019 because, well, Gary, I really wanted to start with Gary because this is where I think it starts because the fairy godmother is tied to him and he's getting massages and such. And Tabitha, that's her name. Tabitha is like, don't you want to get revenge on the legends? Don't you want to be mean to them? Don't you want to do this? And instead, he's just, I want to be part of the gang. I want to be a legend. And Chris, that's where your quote comes from. Correct?
That's true. It's when he wishes the ladies of the legends to come and be in the book club because he didn't get a chance to be part of book club that they formed originally.
He's also trying to be a little smart because he admits later, and you don't really see it, and it is flawed, but he is trying to save the legends. He's not trying to hurt them. He's just trying to spend time with them. He's just trying to have a good time with them amidst the constraints that he knows that Neuron wants to do bad things to them. So he's trying to be creative. And in the end, he fails, unfortunately, but then he succeeds. So I think his ability to kind of resist harming them for as long as he did went pretty well until he got to the point where he was just so frustrated. He's like, look, I'm trying to save you guys and you guys don't care. So go ahead and dance forever. Faster, faster, faster. And Mick with a pacifier in his mouth. That was interesting.
It was. I was trying to figure out if Gary's 2 new nipples were demonic also. I'm assuming they weren't because they probably would have mentioned. But remember, Gary now has 3 nipples because you never know when you'll need a spare.
It looked like the third one was demonic to me, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so maybe Constantine's going to have to perform an exorcism on his extra nipple. I don't know. They didn't mention that it was demonic because that's part of what I was thinking is, maybe there's a demonic nipple at play here that is still kind of screwing with his head.
No, because it's a wish. He told the fairy godmother to give him another regular nipple, and that's what she did. So it's not a demonic one. It's one from the fairy godmother. Because at that point, Tabitha is still in the prison of being a fairy godmother. And that's what we learn. We learn that that's not what she is. It's a prison. And she works her magic in order to break that prison.
Fair. But since she was giving him 2 nipples, I didn't know what might have happened. I wanted to pretend it could be a demonic nipple because the concept makes me laugh, I'll be honest. That's mostly what it was. His demonic nipple just kind of makes me chuckle in the back of my mind.
Well, it's more than just magic that Tabitha uses to break her bond, her fairy godmother bond. There's a fair amount of manipulation against Nora that happens in order to break the bond. She kind of goads Nora into it in order to save Mona. And then Tabitha ended up lying about it because Nora can't save Mona. So,
well, that is her true magic, right? Manipulation. We learned that's what her true staff does. She was controlling Charlie. She was controlling the dragon. She's, I love how she calls Neuron her pet. They're just masters of manipulation. And she gets Nora to give it up to, go, okay, let me be a fairy godmother and going to help Mona. And it's like, she's just like, ha ha ha, you're tied to Gary. Bye.
Nora in the fairy godmother dress and all the glitter and sparkles. And this is from somebody who grew up to be an evil witch. And now all of a sudden she's a fairy godmother with the tiara and everything. I thought that was hilarious.
And the exasperation with having become said fairy godmother when she realizes she got tricked. And my favorite one is when Gary's finally making his turn and wishing that his fairy godmother can go to hell to save Constantine and Ray Palmer. And the legends are looking at her like, Nora? And they're making this wish and Gary's not noticing, and she just hear, Gary, you're a dick. She gets pulled into hell. That's one of my favorite moments of the episode, is him just not noticing and Nora's like, you're a dick.
It was pretty funny. I was like, did she really say that? She really said that. Okay.
It was a good line, and you could put yourself a bit in Nora's shoes and be like, hey, I've just been tricked into becoming this fairy godmother. I'm wearing this stupid dress and tiara. My magic doesn't work how I think it should. Oh, now I'm getting this break where I might actually get to do something the right way. And then it didn't quite pan out.
It's a good thing she got sent to hell, because Constantine, he was doing all smooth. He was working his thing. He got to the triumvirate, and then there was that classic moment. For those of us who are Constantine fans, we really understand the Astra moment. They've tried to work it in. I think the writers did a pretty good job of trying to establish the whole Astra moment. But for those of us who've read the comics and watched the show, that is like the biggest weight on his soul. And it makes sense that he picked her. But she's not the little girl anymore, is she, SP?
No, I am not a Constantine fan. I did not watch any of the Constantine episodes because he had his own show for a while. But apparently there was this Astra moment within his own show. And it turns out that Astra has grown up in hell and has become very adept at her own survival and possibly even moving up in the food chain in hell. And it turns out that the pick was bad. It turns out that if he would have picked Ray right off the bat, that they would have been able to go back up to the surface. I'm sure that there were some things that wouldn't have been able to happen had they done that. But we inadvertently basically end up with a new big bad for next season. We've already run the news for it. Astra will be in the next season. I just didn't get the whole thing until we watched this episode, until we watched the finale. Now, especially at the end of the episode, you see Astra, redeeming all of her chips for all of these history's like biggest monsters, biggest human monsters. And you're talking about Genghis Khan. You're talking about people that did a lot of damage in their lives. At least the history that we know says that they did. And now we have Astra with all these big bads coming back for next season. So that next season is already set. We already see that coming. I'm wondering if Astra can be redeemed. And I'm thinking she can, but Neuron couldn't. Neuron's dead. And, it doesn't always happen. I did like the Damien reference. Neuron mentioned Damien. I thought we might see him in hell. We didn't. So it was nice to at least hear his name and how he was doing. And it appears not so well down in hell right now.
But you've also got to want to be redeemed, to be redeemable, just even some small part of you. And she seems pretty comfortable, probably because she's grown up in hell, basically, by living in the system that's there and being able to go and collect those chips for evil souls. And I think one of them was even Charlie Manson, if I saw correctly. So we could have some very interesting big or mini big bads showing up this upcoming season.
If Ray can work his magic, he can turn any of those bads to a good friend. But
Ray's only there like half the season.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Because Constantine made the wrong choice, we got this awesome moment of, Nora and Constantine, they're right in front of the door, and he's warning her. He's just like, this place, it can twist the most innocent. We have to be ready. And then they open the door, and it's Ray playing Jenga with Vandal Savage.
Which was
hilarious.
Hilarious. And it was really cool to see the actor return, Casper Crump. I'm probably remembering his last name incorrectly, but I was like, oh yeah, nice callback to like season 1. We haven't seen you in ages, buddy.
Nope. That
And
was
things
pretty
got
cool.
deep. And they
Apparently.
found out it was all about a girl. Do you remember what that girl used to do, Chris?
Yeah, I remember. She used to be a barista.
Okay, so why that is so funny to me this week is my daughter just got a job at Starbucks. So my daughter is now a barista.
Well,
Is
we
she
learned
going to
that
become an immortal hawk woman next? Because that'd be kind of cool, SP.
I know, that's what I'm thinking. Like, well, if we continue on this path, then, all baristas go down this path, or was it just this one special one? I don't know. So we'll see. We'll find out. I'll keep everybody posted.
Has she shown any inclinations towards spiked maces or weaponry like that?
Her first shift was this morning. So, and I haven't seen her since, and I probably won't see her until the weekend after next. So
Could be on the Wave Rider by now, then, is what I'm hearing. She's now a barista officially. She might get called to go and help save time and space by Captain Rip Hunter. I hope you've prepared her appropriately.
She watched the first few seasons of Arrow.
There you go. She's good to go then.
Okay.
She's been properly trained, more so than the barista was in Legends.
She also really likes the Suicide Squad movie.
Award winning. Don't forget that part. Award winning.
I forget it all the time.
Don't worry. I'm here to remind you because I know, and the people know, how much you, Stargate Pioneer, love the award-winning Suicide Squad movie. Not the Suicide Squad that James Gunn is doing, but Suicide Squad by David Ayer. We know you love it.
That is incorrect, but we can progress anyway.
We'll fix that in post. It's actually correct. SP just misspoke, so that's an edit point right there to make sure it's said appropriately.
Well, we really learned that Neron's true plan isn't just to collect souls, but to actually open a portal between hell and earth using all of the fear that they're collecting because he wants to make earth hell again, which I thought that was kind of cute in a very awful way.
It felt very Ghostbuster-y to me a little bit, like Ghostbusters 2, where then, and especially at the end, we're like, we need to inspire good feelings. I was like, where's the Statue of Liberty covered in goo? Where's the Statue of Liberty covered in goo?
I was so disappointed we didn't get a Bebo moment.
But we kind of did, though, at the end.
You know, when they had to hold hands.
I mean, yeah, they hold it, but we didn't see Bebo. So I just hope that we see Bebo again.
Bebo's expensive, probably.
That's
I think
fair,
Bebo's
that's
got
fair
an
enough.
agent by now.
Bebo has his own agent. Legends can't afford Bebo anymore.
Because we learned that, well, Constantine learns that the actual contract Ray has with Neron is that if Neron hurts or kills Nate, then the contract's void, and that means Ray would have his body back. And Constantine does his little tricks, which he tried to do earlier in Hell. He tried to trick Astra. So that was a nice little foreshadowing that it's not like it came out of nowhere. Earlier in the story, we actually got to see Constantine try to do that trick, but Astra saw through it. But in this case, Neron didn't.
Is it just because he's cocky, do we think? That he just thinks he's got everything won, so he's not really thinking about it? Because
what happens right before? What happens right before? Because we haven't talked about Zari and the dragon egg.
Yeah.
So
Tabitha is eaten by... do we call the dragon Wixter or do we call the dragon Mithra?
I think Mithra.
Okay, yeah. I'll go with Mithra. So Mithra eats Tabitha and even belches afterwards. So although it's comic books, and in comic books, nobody's really dead, I think Tabitha is really gone.
I mean, we got time travel. You could theoretically come and save her a split second before she dies just to return her to die. Same theory I had with Captain Cold, which has not come to fruition, which I keep hoping. But I think that theory is for naught at this point in time.
They kind of did that whole thing in Doctor Who with Clara, which was one of the companions. And she is basically living the rest of her life without a heartbeat. She's like one heartbeat away from dying, and she has to return to that moment. And so she's out there. I mean, we've transitioned doctors, so I don't think we'll ever see Clara again. But that basically happened with Clara in Doctor Who recently, in the last couple of years.
But I thought it was great, sorry, because they're all like trying to get the monsters out. There's the monster jailbreak from the Time Bureau. She completely forgets the egg, and then she actually sees a young version of herself.
It was a cute moment. It was really cute. Yeah. And that probably led to them not having the dragon. And so they failed in their little mission because she's like, oh, wow, look, little Zari she's actually has friends and everything's going fine for her. And then a split second later, the Time Bureau opens up because one of the I'm going to say it's a teacher. It could have been a parent.
Or the playground monitor or whatever.
Yeah, used the eyes app and showed this magical creature. So the Time Bureau agents came and nabbed the dragon and took it away. So they failed in their mission. But I think if it wasn't for the fact that Zari was all into her younger self actually doing well, they would have nabbed the dragon.
Probably. I think that's reasonable.
But then we wouldn't have the great moment later on when, Sarah and Tabitha have that really interesting fight. And it was really interesting seeing the actor who plays Tabitha going, fighting against, Sarah Lance. But then Sarah is there and the dragon's ready to eat her. And then we get little Zari. Mithril.
Little Zari actually saved the day because little Zari came up and said, okay, Mithril, dance. And so it danced, and then the tail went way around and swept the leg of Tabitha. Tabitha went flying and her staff went flying the other way. And that ended winning the time, right? So that was amazing that the dance by Mithra as commanded by little Zari actually happened. I don't think little Zari realizes that she had this huge effect on everything.
Not yet.
No, not yet. There's potential that something could be realized in the upcoming season, but
yeah, that's the biggest issue. If I want to even call it an issue, I can't really call it an issue because I know it's going to be resolved in some way, shape, manner, or form. And I don't think it's going to be a Sarah Diggle moment, but I think Zari is going to be changed. And we ended up with a new character because her brother is there with the Power Stone at the end. And it's like he's been there all along for the last 2 years. I just don't see them pushing Zari away from the show. I think Zari's still going to be part of the show, but I don't know how they're going to bring her back. And also Nate, he has this issue with 2 women now. I'm like, oh man, just get off the show.
But he doesn't remember that he had something going or starting with Zari because of how time travel works. Because remember, he's like, something feels strange or something like that effect when he was done hugging Zari's brother, where he evidently used more pelvis than normal, we were told.
I think what's going to happen is, I was just thinking about this. I have no idea if this is what the writers have chosen to do or not, because they've already filmed the first few episodes, I think, of Legends of Tomorrow, even though it doesn't air until January. So
I know they just started their part of Crisis.
Okay. So what I think is going to happen is, remember, Zari was on the Wave Rider, which was in the temporal zone before Nate died, and she wanted to come back to try to help bring Nate back to life. She had to be there for Nate. I don't disagree with that. It probably led to Nate being able to come back. But I think what she did before she left is she left a message for somebody. And that message will still be there at the Wave Rider because it was in the temporal zone.
I mean, a message is all well and good, but a message isn't really going to restore deleted memories to a Zari that's been altered by the timeline alteration. So, I mean, all it's really going to be able to do is be like, hey, you knew these folks. It's going to be weird because they think they know you, but you don't remember any of them. And hey, this guy's kind of in love with you, but you don't return those feelings because you don't know him and haven't lived through all these adventures. So I think a note would be interesting. I think it would fit the soap opera-y feeling they like to touch on sometimes on shows like this, where you have to deal with feelings, unrequited feelings. So It's possible, but I don't think it's the cure-all that resolves the fact that Zari, as we know it, is she's gone.
There will definitely be a change, I'm predicting, but I don't know what that change is going to look like. And even if it's Zari coming back to say goodbye, basically, which could happen, which she was really a great part of the ship, and the crew.
As far as I recall, they have said that she's still a season regular for next season, not that she's part-time or anything like that.
So, okay, then I was going back in my mind on the show and seeing characters that were like that could have been considered season regulars. And the professor's daughter is a great example, right? She wasn't, but you could go back and you could have written her as a season regular, right? So, yeah, I don't know. They might try that tact.
She's barely in the show in comparison to Zari.
That's my point, is that she wasn't, but she was an auxiliary character that could have been written in. Like, Zari could be written to be in the Time Bureau.
I thought the Time Bureau was going away.
Okay.
No.
No? Okay.
No, the Time Bureau is not going to go away. Zari did not create the Time Bureau.
I thought
Okay,
it was one of the
it's-
consequences of all of this stuff, but maybe I just misremember a news story.
The Argus of the future. Oh, well, the Argus of the future will be going away. You might be right on the Time Bureau. I seem to remember something like that.
It tends to blur together because that news was probably 3 or 4 months ago at this point in time, and we're all in crisis world right now where everything's about, oh, crisis, this guy's in a costume now. Is that guy going to be in a costume? So I fully admit I could be misremembering, and if I am, just send us a tweet at Starling Tribune and be like, Chris, you've got it all wrong. Here's the actual story of what's going on. I would appreciate it.
Okay, so when Nate dies, thanks to Constantine, doing his trick and everything, he's there with his dad and with Hank. And I cried. I cried the first time I watched the episode. I cried again. I think I'm going to cry every single time I watch that episode with that moment.
It wasn't the only time we saw a vision of Hank, because Hank was in the middle of he had a statue at the beginning of Hayworld,
Just
too.
like Walt Disney.
Yeah, right. So you had the statue, and then you saw him at the top of the stadium or whatever that was, to talk to his dead son. And then you had that moment between the two of them, which I think is great. I don't know how much of that Nate will remember. I hope he remembers something of it, because it was a very touching moment.
Yeah, it made me smile because Nate finally got the closure of getting to have a conversation with his father, lay everything on the table. Because remember, when his father died, Nate was of the mind, oh, he might be a bad guy and all this, and then found out, no, he's actually a good guy, got manipulated by Neron. So Nate gets that moment of closure with his father, which is something that it made me feel good. I didn't cry. I know I have before when Professor Stein died, for instance. That one hit me really hard before. But this was... I was happiness. I was just like, good for Nate. He gets that closure, and then at the end of the show, I was like, oh, poor Nate, because he gets that closure with his dad, and now some lingering part of him is going to realize, the woman I fell in love with is gone now. So it's kind of a mixed bag for Nate this week.
I did really enjoy it when Hank basically kicked his son off the roof.
Yes, that was nice. I like that moment.
So, SP, is there anything else you want to talk about?
We finally get the dragon. I mean, we talked about the dragon already, but the dragon hasn't gone anywhere. The dragon's still around. So that'll be a cute little dragon. If we lose Bebo for the dragon, I can live with that. I can go with a baby dragon for next year. The brother, Zari's brother, I forget his name. He's going to be an interesting addition to the show next year. And I can only assume that he's going to be in at least one, if not all of the episodes. So they're basically bringing on a new character. And then we've already heard of other characters that are leaving the show. So this is like a pre-loading of the crew back.
Is he the new time bro for Nate now? They seem to present their relationship. Now, granted, we saw all for a whopping 30 seconds max on screen. very similar to how he interacts with Rey.
So I was wondering if the three of them had brodom.
Time bros.
Yeah, I could see it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just looking forward to next year. I'm curious as to how they do the Zari storyline, because I don't think that's over yet. I'm curious as to how Crisis is going to affect the Legends, because I think it will. We didn't talk at all about the Monitor. The Monitor actually shows up at the final battle.
That's what I was going to bring up.
And he had like a disapproving look on his face. And then when they started to win, he started eating popcorn. So that was awesome.
I know. It was like at first, because yeah, that timeline's changed. What about you, Chris?
So what I was going to bring up was the fact the Monitor was there, and this was a nice tie-in to be like, hey, we got our little joke in there before that we should have had a crossover. Here's your reminder. We are in the next crossover because, hey, here's the Monitor who showed up in every series, basically, to kind of be the teaser that's saying Crisis is coming. This character is important. So that was great, and I'm really sad that Rey's going to be leaving, because I just wanted to see a continuing fallout of being possessed by a demon and trying to take over the world, and what happens to Ray Palmer's reputation for things that Neron did while possessing his body, because I think that could have been an interesting plot thread. Maybe that's part of why Ray disappears or leaves the Legends, is he's got to rehabilitate his image or try and undo some of the stuff that Neron did in his body. I'm not sure, but I'm going to miss that character a lot, and it just kind of hit home, especially once Brandon Routh kind of flipped that switch when he was back in control of his own body and brought Goofy Ray back right when he was possessed evil Neron. I mean, impressive acting. It was almost like the flip of a switch. You're like, whoa, holy crap, this is great.
The last few weeks, we have gotten a reference to OG Legends, and we got one this week as well. It wouldn't have been both weeks because it was just in one of the episodes, but they've been hitting that hard the last few episodes of the OG crew. And the OG crew right now is Mick and Sarah, but Ray, he was there at the beginning too. And I don't know. I don't think Mick has Dominic Purcell. I don't think he has any plans of leaving the show, at least not for the next year or so.
None that we've heard about, at least.
That's fair. So right now it's just Sarah and Mick.
To be fair, he also did do like Prison Break at the same time he did Legends. I think very early on is when they did like season 1 or 2 of Legends is the same time they did that resurrected season of Prison Break, if I recall. And I think he did both at the same time. So it's entirely possible that even if he did have other work coming up, because of the shortened nature of Legends Tomorrow having only like 13 episodes this next season, there's room in the schedule to be able to go and do other things. And maybe he just enjoys getting to play the character of Mick. Who knows?
He's really good at it.
He's really good.
I always think it's interesting when you have good actors be bad actors, because not only did we have that awful commercial, but then the show at Haywood with, Sarah like White Canary and Nate, it's like, maybe we should listen to them. So bad.
Yeah.
It was, although if there was anybody that I could see as a speedster, Gary actually pulled that off really well.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Well, what do we think is going to happen next season? I know, SP, you've been touching on it. You want to talk about that?
We know that Astra's going to be the big bad. We know that we have to wrap up the Zari storyline at somehow. I don't know how they're going to do that. And Nate's possibly leaving the show. I know Ray is. So you're going to have to reload the Wave Rider again. I really hope that we get more Gideon next year. I know we got a couple of episodes of Gideon this season, but I really hope that we get more of a physical Gideon in the future, because that actress deserves to be on the screen. She might be a dedicated voiceover actor, but she does well on the screen as well.
Chris?
More time hijinks and stuff like that. I'm assuming that as we lose more of the original crew, specifically Ray, we're going to get a further focus on John Constantine, especially as we're dealing with Astra and resurrected souls from hell. So I'm assuming we'll stay strong in the supernatural bent of things, which means Constantine plays a big role. And I'm curious to see how he continues to sort of fit in with the team, even though he grumbles about being part of the team at times.
No costumes.
Yeah.
I think Zari's situation, because the monitor was there, it might be intertwined with Crisis. So I'm wondering if her situation gets fixed during the Crisis events, because we know there's going to be time travel through all of that and different timelines and correcting of some things. I'm wondering if that's how they'll do it.
It could be. I mean, if it's like the comics, Crisis is the great way to reset everything back to a status quo where you're not trying to juggle 6 different continuities of things or be like, okay, in this episode of Flash we did this, which means it would impact this episode of Legends, for instance. It's a good resetting point to level set everything.
It'd be nice to have Sarah Diggle back.
Yeah. Seems unlikely seeing as John Diggle Jr. is playing a predominant role in the future.
I know, but still, it'd be you could do it, especially since they're going to Arrow's ending and they're going to reset the future. So,
okay, I want to get something official. John Diggle as the Green Lantern during Crisis, yes or no?
Do I think it's going to happen or do I want it to happen? What is the question here?
Do you think it's actually going to happen? I think we can all say we want it to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen, but I think we'll get some kind of tease about it.
I think since this is going to be one of his last episodes, I think we're going to get him as Green Arrow or Green Lantern or a Green Lantern.
I mean, I hope we do. There's so many moving pieces there and they've got so many payoff shots they're going to have in Crisis right now because, let's be honest, we've started to see some of those on Instagram and Twitter coming from the set, like seeing Brandon Routh in Kingdom Come Superman suit, seeing Brandon Routh as Clark Kent again, an editor of the Daily Planet, which was kind of cool. But really, as much as I would love to see John Diggle be the Green Lantern, the real payoff, the thing, if I can only get one thing in Crisis that I want, that's Tom Welling in a Superman suit, because I never got it in 10 seasons of Smallville. They teased it. I got it in the Smallville season 11 comic, but never got it in real life. And the pictures we've seen of Tyler Hoechlin and Brandon Routh on set as Superman, it certainly looks like there could have been a third person there that's been cropped out of those photos because they're saving it to show us on the show itself. I want this.
Or maybe in the final lead up to the crossover episodes and the promotions that week. Who knows?
Yeah, I hope they save it for the crossover itself because there's a lot of people, and it's interesting buzz because right as Smallville was wrapping the last few seasons, that's when I actually started using Twitter a lot. So I still follow a lot of those same people that were watching Smallville the same time I was. It's fun to see some of these long dormant accounts I haven't seen active in a while coming back up with people buzzing about the potential of what's going to be Smallville involved in Crisis because people are legit excited about Tom Welling and Erica Durant's returning and potentially getting a final send-off to that character. I want it bad. I want Green Lantern bad, but not as bad as Tom Welling in a Superman suit.
You know, one of the news stories that came out about the crossover, it was Lila and the Harbinger. And there was a big rub this past week over Mark Guggenheim coming out and saying, this is 10 years in the making. I don't know. What do you guys think of that announcement being in the making for 10 years? I kind of think it's a little bit suspect, but what do you guys think?
I think it's hyperbole. I think I think it's something that I had it in my head and I hoped it would be something that would happen 10 years from now. But come on, they had Arrow first. They didn't even know if it's going to get renewed. They didn't even know like Flash was even possible. I think they only really thought about it being a possibility when, they teased it in the first season of Flash. And then they realized, well, things are getting still successful and we're getting multiple seasons. I think now we can kind of like make it happen.
To me, this is an Easter egg when they name dropped that code name. So all the comic book fans then were like, oh, that's pretty cool. And now they can kind of retcon it slightly, what their intent may have been, and be like, look, we set all this up so you can have this character. We name dropped it almost 10 years ago. Well, you did, but I don't think, like Michelle said, I don't think 10 years ago you had this plan of, oh, we're going to do Crisis on Infinite Earths. If you did, kudos to you, other than just like some idea, hey, if this all picks up, we can get a bunch of stuff going. Crisis would be really cool. But that early on in the Flash and Arrow universe, I think it's slightly overhyped. Now, it's cool, things like that, but when Mark Guggenheim was on Twitter hyping, oh, we've got a payoff of something we've been building for 10 years coming up, that is not what I was expecting. And when I read the news, I was like, oh, that's it? It felt like a bit more hype than what it actually was. Maybe I'm a party pooper. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we are basically thinking in the same lines. I mean, it was a cool announcement, and it's cool for Mark personally to come out and saying this was 10 years in the making, but it's like, 10 years ago, it was a different time. It was a different universe.
And again, maybe if that had been one of the first announcements that came out about Crisis, people would have been a lot more excited. But think of everything we've had come out. Kevin Conroy, Burt Ward, Erica Durance, Tom Welling, things like that. You're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then it's, hey, this name drop that we did of a character, we're going to turn them into this character for Crisis. And you're like, that's cool, I guess, but that's not as cool as Superman from Smallville.
I do think it's cool that her character is coming back, specifically for the crossover, because we had a declining use of the character in the last season or two. So it's good to know that she'll at least be around for the crossover. We don't know what universe it's coming from. We don't know if it's the Prime or Earth 2 or Earth 53. We don't know, but the actor is coming back. So that's cool to see.
Very much so.
Well, the ramp up to Crisis is going to get started on October 12th when Arrow comes back. It's its season 8, episode 1 called Starling City. In the wake of discovering what his future holds, Oliver will find himself pit against his most challenging battle yet, one that will leave the multiverse hanging in the balance. Directed by one of our favorites, James Banford, and written by Beth Schwartz and Mark Guggenheim.
Live from the Starling Tribune main news desk on floor 52 of the Starling Tribune Tower, it's the weekly news roundup with award-winning chief news anchor Michelle Ely. And now, Michelle Ely.
Thanks, SP. This week I have some help from Chris. So, Chris, why don't you get us started?
Let's start things off, and we've gotten some information about how and when Stephen Amell decided he was going to leave the Arrow TV show. Now, this is interesting because once they announced Arrow was ending, we all had our theories on when was it Stephen might have thought he was done, wanted to move on to other things, and he kind of gave us some of that information. Comic Book Resources is where we got the news from, and he suggested, or decided rather, to depart during a break in filming for Season 6, and while he suggested he leave the show following Season 7, Greg Berlanti convinced him to try a different strategy for his exit. According to Stephen, quote, I decided midway through Season 6, basically over the Christmas break, that it was time to be done. And I broached the subject with Greg, that's Greg Berlanti. He and I talked for about a month before he formally notified Mark, that's CW President Mark Pedowitz, and WB President Peter Roth, because he was like, think about this a lot. Let's talk about it, because once I kick it up the chain, once the ball starts rolling, he knew what was going to happen. So I thought about it then. I assumed the series was going to end at the end of Season 7, but Greg's smarter than me, and he had a really good idea about a limited run in Season 8. So they were able to convince Steven to stay on board for Season 8 to kind of set up Crisis, give the character a proper send-off. And we all know it's kind of worked out well for Stephen Amell. He's already got his new gig lined up as soon as he's done with Arrow. So kudos to Stephen for staying on board a little bit longer to give that character a proper send-off and help set a bunch of other things up.
It also makes a little bit more sense once you think about Emily Beck-Rickard's departure from the show, because if they knew about this at the second half of Season 6 when they were filming the ending to Season 6, I can see Emily saying, okay, I'll stick around for one more year, but after that I have to think about my career and think about what's next for me. And I could definitely see her decision to leave the show at the end of last year versus waiting midway through this season 8 coming up.
Well, in more Arrow news, one of my favorites, Colton Hayes. Yes, my baby. EW has exclusively learned that Colton Hayes is indeed returning to Arrow and will recur in the final season. The news arrives 2 months after the star's demotion from series regular status sparked some fear that he might not appear in the CW superhero drama's farewell song. Thankfully, those worries all for naught. We couldn't have ended the show without having him back, showrunner Beth Schwartz tells EW. So he's coming back. We're going to get some resolution. We have Thea next year, so maybe we'll find out. Did they break up? Was the exile on purpose? Who knows?
Yeah, I am glad they're bringing Roy back, because based off how they'd set everything up in the future, if they didn't and just kind of did like some aside comment that kind of hand waved away what was happening, it would have been kind of a disservice to the character. So at least we get a proper send off to a character that's been in the Arrowverse for a long time.
I'm looking forward to seeing him back on the show. I thought all along that he would be part of the final episodes. I didn't know if it would mean Crisis or not, but I always knew he was coming back. And we'll see where his relationship goes. And there is a link to the next news story, possibly. And I'll leave that for after it's said.
Chris?
So our next news story here is that the CW is moving forward with another Arrow spinoff, headlined by Catherine McNamara, Katie Cassidy, and Juliana Harkavy, reprising their Arrow roles. The new superhero squad is a next-generation version of Team Arrow, with the costumed offspring of the original members, or of the original membership, rather. At the center of the next-gen collective is Mia Smoke, the fierce daughter of Oliver Queen, a.k.a. the Green Arrow, the central character of Arrow, who was also, the former mayor of Star City, billionaire playboy philanthropist, club owner, Russian Bratva agent, all sorts of different things. But it looks like they're going the route, like a lot of people had predicted, of a spin-off set in the future. I guess it could be interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a little burnt out. We've got too much stuff on the plate right now. I'm just like, I can't imagine adding another show right now to what I am watching, but it fills the hole that Arrow closes, I guess, or leaves behind.
And it'll depend on how much money and effort they throw into developing the series. And by that, I mean like special effects and stunts and bringing in A-team people to write the scripts and everything. So we'll see how that pans out. But the link that I was trying to make before is that this would leave an in for Colton Hayes to actually be on the new show as well, since he is part of that timeline right now.
Yeah, fair point.
I'm like, sure, but then if it's in the apocalyptic time that we had last season, then it just sort of feels like, what, do they all lose?
I mean, Crisis could reset it, is part of what we need to consider here, is depending on what happens in Crisis, that's like the penultimate episode of Arrow, I think we found out, or something like that. So it could basically serve as a soft reboot of the Arrow universe, which could potentially fix the future to some extent and leave us in a better future with these characters. But, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. There's too much stuff that could happen in Crisis.
That was my issue, Michelle, the same issue I had about the future was it means that OTA, the original Team Arrow, failed and something spectacularly went wrong. Last year, we didn't know exactly what it is. This year, we kind of see it coming up as Crisis. I don't know what that means for Arrow or this new series, because it really doesn't have a name yet that I've seen. And I don't like thinking that I've invested the last 7 years and soon to be 8 in this series in Arrow, and they lose. It's like, why did I watch it? You take a look at any series that I watch, and if it ends poorly, then I'm like, I hate that. Like How I Met Your Mother, I bring that up all the time because it ended terribly. It was a preconceived ending that was made 10 years earlier that they could have and should have changed, and they decided not to when it aired. Chris has brought up in the past when I've talked about this, the fact that the writers actually put a different ending up on YouTube. CBS put a different
which is
ending
much
up.
Better.
It is. And if they ended it that way, it would have been great. But they didn't. They chose to go the route that they did and was bad. So that's an example of a show that I watched for 10 years and it ended poorly, and I will never watch it again because of the way it ended. And depending on how this series ends will depend on if I want to keep watching the universe, if I will ever go back and rewatch Arrow. And it's been a long 8 years, 7 years right now. And to have that, especially when I've invested so much time and effort podcasting on it, if it turns out to be bad, it's like I've wasted all this time doing Starling Tribune, and I don't want to feel like it's a waste. So I have more than an average person's concern about the ending of Arrow. And I really hope that Beth Schwartz really brings it home. She's given us a lot of hope last year, and I can only take that hope and move forward with it, that it'll be okay, and that she's convinced the higher ups to change some of that dystopian future, because it really just doesn't leave a good taste in my mouth for what's current. And by the way, it's all done now. They've filmed basically everything up to the crisis, up to the crossover. So nothing can be done about it except for actually air the episodes at this point.
So part of the problem they have with shows like Arrow and these other beloved shows that run a while, How I Met Your Mother, Chuck, Battlestar, stuff like that, is sticking the landing is very hard, especially when you have a passionate fan base, especially when that passionate fan base has their own preconceived notions of how everything is going to end. It's hard to stick the landing. And I think it's hard from a fan perspective to not take what we think the end should be and set that aside from what the end actually is. And I think in some cases, it's justifiable to be upset with how a show ends. But I think other times we just suffer from the fact that it's not what we imagined it was going to be, and it can't quite live up to that hype. Like, the ending to Chuck, for instance, I think is bad. The ending to How I Met Your Mother, I think is bad. The ending to Battlestar Galactica, I think is flawed, but I don't think it's bad. So it's not one of those things that I look back after and be like, oh, I feel like I wasted my time, or it just kind of flopped on me at the end. Now, the ending's not as good as everything that led up to it. I fully admit that. So it's just a matter of how they staged this. And what I will give them credit for is they've been fairly good at managing fan expectations in recent time, and not pandering necessarily, but kind of guiding us towards our own preconceived notions matching with what a lot of it is that they're doing. So I'm cautiously optimistic to how they're going to wrap things up. I just, honestly, this rumored Birds of Prey spinoff, I don't care as much as I do about some of the other shows that are already there. And I think it suffers, like I'd mentioned, just from there's so much stuff right now, and I don't know that I want to jump on another one, especially with characters that are set in the future world that doesn't necessarily tie in with everything else. It's something I can wait and come back to if it's good.
There are so many. I mean, how many comic book shows are they going to have the next? I know they're not going to be airing all at the same time, but you've got Arrow, Flash, Batwoman, Black Lightning, Legends of Tomorrow, maybe this backdoor pilot. Is there another one? So there's
Supergirl?
six.
Did you mention Supergirl?
No, I didn't. So that's 7 shows. It's a lot. I mean, I know Arrow's going away, so you're left with 6, but that's 7 shows, and that's 7 hours a week. That's a lot of time to spend in one universe without variety. And if one of the cylinders is not firing, or several of the cylinders in this engine are not firing, makes for a tough slog to get through to something like the crossover if they ever do something like this again. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Chris. This is prime for, okay, we're going to watch what we're going to watch, and then we're just going to leave everything else on the cutting floor, maybe get back to it at another time. It's just too much. Chris and I, and Michelle, you lived through this time too, Star Trek, where you had 2 Star Trek series running at the same time. You had TNG and I believe it was DS9 running at the same time. And then you had DS9 and you had Voyager running at the same time. And that was just 3 shows. And then by the time we get to the 4th one, Enterprise, there was a lot of burnout. Of course, that was over the course of 22, 23 years. But that was just a lot to take in. And that was only 3, ultimately 4 shows, and never more than 2 airing at the same time.
So they suffer from the same problem that I worry about with Disney and some of their stuff, is there's so much content that's all connected. And it's easier to do with movies if you put 3 movies out a year, because your time commitment is you're going to the theater 3 times. But what has concerned me a little bit with Disney Plus, especially with the Star Wars and the Marvel stuff, is here's all these new series that we're adding in that tie into continuity. And my concern with the Arrow universe right now is, like SP said, if they put them all on at the same time, it'd be 7 hours of content. They're smart enough that they're not putting every season, lining up every show rather at the beginning of the season. So some of it's going to be mid-season replacements and stuff like that. But it's such a big time commitment. And I look at that and go, that's 7 hours. And then I go, I got a podcast about it. I've got other podcasts I need to do. And I'm like, the time commitment to be able to watch all of those, it's daunting. And I will fully admit, so far behind on Flash, 2 seasons behind on Supergirl. And I kind of enjoyed the freedom of it because I was getting overwhelmed with all of the content. And I've kind of enjoyed that break of it and being able to pick up some other stuff. And I probably should get caught up. I'll probably get caught up enough to know what's happening for Crisis, even if it's just reading plot summaries and stuff like that. But it's overload. And it feels... And you've got to be careful because it happened with Walking Dead. It turned into a chore for me to watch, and I didn't want to watch it anymore, and that's why I stopped. And I don't want that to be what happens with all of the shows in the CW DC universe, because if it becomes a chore to watch, I'm just going to be like, no, I'm checking out. I got other stuff I'd rather do. And I think they've been smart about it so far, and it hasn't happened. But again, remember, I've also just kind of stopped watching 2 shows. You guys, I think you're more up to date than I am, so kudos to you guys for being able to power through. It's a lot of content, and that's just what's daunting.
As of today, I'm completely caught up. I was completely caught up close to the end of the season, and then I wanted to watch Legends of Tomorrow as we covered it. So I am completely caught up with everything right now. It's just a lot. And by the way, this is a lot of first world problems, right? Where you have 7 TV shows in a comic book universe that you actually enjoy are being produced at the same time. You know, wow. Think of that when we were growing up. That never happened. So first world problems.
I know it's tough. And especially when you want to have a life like I do gaming. I know I stream and I watch some gaming streams and I do some real life D&D. It is a lot. And for me, that spinoff isn't going to fill the Arrow void. It's Batwoman. And my last piece of news just shows how awesome Ruby Rose is. She actually broke her neck. She stepped up in her involvement in doing her own stunts for Batwoman. And in a new interview, she elaborated on how she discovered she had a broken neck while filming the upcoming Arrowverse series. While promoting the show on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, Rose noted she had herniated a 2-disc in her spine while filming the series pilot. Although she initially believed the pain and discomfort to be a broken rib, the sensation persisted for months while she was filming a movie in Romania where she similarly performed her own stunts. After receiving an MRI, Rose learned the true extent of her injury with only a tiny portion of her spine not severed. Running the risk of becoming paraplegic should she strain and move her back even in the slightest sensitive position, Rose underwent surgery to repair her spine, taking time off to recuperate before jumping back into filming the rest of the series. Wow.
Wow. Glad they caught it and that nothing bad happened. So very lucky there.
We've talked in the show and probably on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well about the stunt work that is done on the shows. For instance, over on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Chloe Bennett, in this fantastic scene, it's all one shot that she did. She actually ended up breaking a wrist. Was it both wrists? No, it was just one wrist during that whole thing. And every time she watches that sequence, she knows the moment her wrist breaks in the whole thing. And then she came back and filmed the rest of the season. I think it was only another episode or 2, but she was there the whole time. So that's an example of somebody that's not a stunt person doing her own stunts that actually ends up getting injured. This is not limited to females in comic book shows. This is all over the place where you have somebody doing an action show, whether it's a film or a movie or something like that. And this is dangerous business, and it's why they have stunt people to do it. And when this particular case, being that close to being a paraplegic, I actually have a neck issue myself. And I can go into it at another time. I know we're running long right now, but I know how serious this is. If they went in to operate on mine, I have an 80% chance of being a paraplegic. So I decided not to get the operation. And I'm glad that she was able to get her operation done without going through that. So Hopefully, she's an amazing, talented actor, and hopefully in the future, she's able to do everything that she wanted to do with her career. I can't imagine the pain or the anxiety that went with her as she found out what was really going on with her neck.
It gives you a greater appreciation for actors who do their own stunts, and then you realize, you're trained to do stunts, but not as well, arguably, as stuntmen and stunt women who pretty much that's their entire career. So kudos to those that do those stunts. But man, very lucky for Ruby Rose that they caught it before she became paralyzed. I mean, some of the way actors go out there and do stunts like Keanu Reeves and stuff like that, you look at it and you go, wow, these guys are sort of becoming stuntmen in their own rights. But what an appreciation you got to have for that art of being a stuntman.
One thing that always stands out in my mind is I've known Tom Cruise has done his own stunts for a long time, but there is that one famous shot of him actually being belted to the exterior of the airplane as it's taking off during one of the Mission Impossible things. I mean, that is an incredible stunt that he did himself that I don't know if I would do if I was in his position. I mean, wow.
I know I've read interviews where movie executives just cringe and they're like crossing their fingers every time he does stuff like that, but they can't stop him.
Because he's the producer now. Can't stop a producer.
Nope. And that's all the news we have.
Well, guys, looking at the time, SP had mentioned we were running a little long, so we are running long, so we are going to wrap things up. So a big thank you to the live listeners over in our chat room or watching over at geeks.live. Also, thank you to everyone who downloads the audio podcast over at starlingtribune.com or catches the video replay over at youtube.com/GonnaGeek.
Throughout the episode, we were talking about different news stories that have popped about the upcoming crisis or upcoming CW shows. And we talk about that live when the announcements come out on our Discord server, which you can find at GonnaGeek.com/Discord. One of the three of us usually gets the news as it's being tweeted out, or Instagram or Facebook, or the story drops on Deadline or whatever, usually, or The Verge. One of us usually posts that over there. So if you want to stay up to date with all of the events as it pertains to the CW Arrowverse shows, gonna go to GonnaGeek.com/Discord and get the real-time information. We'll also come back and talk about it on the show, but if you want to get it real-time over there, and then you can interact with us, and then we can bring those opinions forward in the show as well. And remember, you can always catch us live as we record via www.geeks.live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern or 4:30 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays. There's a live chat room. For instance, we had American Liberty in the chat room today, and we were going back and forth with him all night. So it was great to have that interaction as we're recording live.
We would love to hear from you. We're the Starling Tribune on Facebook and Instagram, at Starling Tribune on Twitter, and you can call us at 612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283. Well, this brings us to the end of another great episode. Any last words before we sign off? At Stargate Pioneer.
Hashtag Dragon Dance.
At the Chris Farrell.
Hashtag Demonic Nipple.
And I am at Michelle Ely, signing off with hashtag Jenga in Hell. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at GonnaGeek.com or check out our archive at StarlingTribune.com. Visit GonnaGeek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at Incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.
Hoss.